Let's just talk about who is Tommy Robinson. As we said, there's real name Stephen Yaxley-Lennon. Why did he change his name? What does he do? Why is he notorious?
Well, firstly, I have to correct you. I'm not a supporter of him. I'm somebody who I think understands the background to what's gone on here. If you think this is a young guy from Luton who originally went to the return home of the Anglian regiment from Afghanistan and saw Anjam Chowdhury and his group of nutters burning poppies and shouting abuse at them, and the police on that occasion were completely unwilling to act, as Tommy Robinson says. And so, actually, you know, time and time again, I think that Tommy Robinson and his movement actually is against the fact that we live in a politically correct society where the police and the establishment are not willing to take action against people where they behave in an offensive and obnoxious manner.
And Nick, that is the thing. It's not that everything he says is wrong, but sometimes the way he and his supporters say it is wrong.
My concern is that he's being seen as the champion of the British working classes, and the working classes that I know do not necessarily share his views. If you go to a pub, they will accept that if they need hospital treatment or their wives or husbands need hospital treatment, there's every possibility they're going to be looked after by someone who was not born in this country, does not share the same faith. They may be, wherever they were born, they may be Muslims or anything else.
But, Nick, he believes that mainstream media does not represent him.
And this would be, Eamonn, the mainstream media that actually, in the case of the Times newspaper, broke that child grooming scandal, and as a result of it, it became Newspaper of the Year, and the journalist became Journalist of the Year. This would be the mainstream media that people like me here at LBC, people like you on This Morning, employ journalists who carefully research everything, single fact. You, Raymond and Ruth, you, between us, we've probably been in this business 60, 70, 80 years. I don't think journalists have ever worked as hard to ensure the facts they put out there are true. The fake news that he talks about is actually what goes out on the web, where he is a warrior on the web, because you don't have to check or back up anything.
But Nick,
you can say what you like and it's unchallenged.
Nick, let me say this to you, and I'm not here as an apologist for Tommy Robinson at all, but the journalists who check those facts and the producers and the researchers in mainstream media are probably left of centre. Would you agree? And they book left of centre people.
Yes, that is a problem.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to say, as in Brexit, as in Tommy Robinson. Do we ignore his views, though, and representing some of those views at our peril? Has he not got a point there?
To go back to your other contributor, what was going on when those soldiers came back from Iraq and Afghanistan was absolutely wrong, and that's what gave voice. And of course that is something that we must be aware of, and of course that is something that must be countered. And for too long, any conversation about uncontrolled, and I stress that word, Eamonn, uncontrolled immigration has been shut down. You're a racist. Everybody, well, I would hope any sane person agrees with immigration. My last name is quite a clue. Uncontrolled immigration is what causes a problem, and that is where Robinson does have some merit.
Andre, does he get a fair hearing from the press and the media?
I think sometimes there is an unfair representation of him, but remember why he's so popular. There are working-class communities right across this country where people feel disenfranchised and disempowered, and essentially they feel that they're ignored because of the you can't say that culture.
Tell me this, then, and funny, I saw a television show recently where they had a guy doing exactly the same thing, broadcasting directly to the public on Netflix, and which brings me to America. Why is he so popular in America?
So I think that one of the things that's very important for Americans, and obviously I work for a US publication, among other things, I think what's really important for Americans is the feeling that you're preserving free speech. And Americans tend to feel that the reason why there are problems in this country with a lack of integration is because there is not free speech to highlight the issues. Now, obviously, to Americans, they simply believe that all court reporting should be allowed and our rules on contempt of court are ludicrous. But I think that they also feel that politicians in America want to follow the mass immigration model that Europe has followed, and they see that as...
They fear that. So, Nick, fear is a lot about what we're talking about here. Fear from him, fear from everyone else listening to what he has to say. You know, as a top seasoned broadcaster and newspaper journalist, and Robinson, he would like to do this job. He'd like to be there and do that sort of thing. What advice, Nick, would you give him? If you're saying, do you know what, Mr. Robinson, if you genuinely feel you have got a message, how would you advise him to put it across?
he has to come on what he despises, which is mainstream media. And Andre has a very good point. This is why it appeals to America, because you have, or Americans, because you have Donald Trump's row with mainstream media. But you can't always choose the media on which you choose or won't go to represent yourself. He has to do interviews with me. Eamonn, Ruth, he has to do interviews with you. He has to be asked unpleasant questions, which now he can either ignore or just say this is all lies or this is fake news, a la Trump, and just close it down. He has to put himself up to some kind of journalistic rigour. Then
Nick,
people like me would have more confidence.
But Nick, part of the problem here, I think, is that there is a feeling that the mainstream media mischaracterise people. Look, the people that go and support Tommy Robinson are working class kids. You know, they have the appearance of working class kids. Some of them have these previous convictions because they've been a bit naughty when they were younger. But that doesn't mean that you should completely ignore them. And I think part of the problem is we're constantly interested in the image of these people as the sort of football hooligan types and not necessarily about the fact they do have some legitimate concerns about immigration.
But Andre, he could come on a show like this. This is live. You know, he couldn't be misrepresented on here. Nick's show is live. I mean, Nick has a point that surely he can say he hates the press and he hates the media.
I think he was slightly put off this channel because he appeared with Piers Morgan and it went slightly wrong. But then again, those things will happen.
These things will happen.